Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Awesome Finds here on Vinyl Rewind. I got a bunch of records to share with you today, including some that I picked up from a thrift store, which has been a very long time since I've done that. When I first started this series on the channel, that was mostly where I got my vinyl, honestly. And then over the years, I just stopped going because you just don't find that much good stuff these days. And even when you do, it's often scratched or broken. And so as I had less and less time, it just wasn't worth it. So I would go to just record stores and stuff. And speaking of which, I do have several records I picked up from some record stores. But beyond that, let's talk about some new releases. First up, we have John Lennon. This is the new remix of Mind Games. I gotta say, as I get older, I appreciate John Lennon's solo work more and more. Now, I've had a Capitol reissue of this album for over 15 years, and apart from the title track, it never really gripped me until I listened to this new remix done by Sean Lennon. And you know what? I really, something happened. It just clicked, and this album is super solid. I think the new mix sounds really good. It has an overall consistent sound production, and it's got that warm kind of 70s rich mahogany kind of vibe. The best way I can describe it is the way the guitars sound. I feel like I can just hear it coming out of the amps directly. It sounds so rich and analog. And beyond that, the writing is really good, and John's voice sounds great. Now, this particular pressing is done in the Czech Republic, and if you've seen Parlogram Auction's video, you'll know that this is chock full of issues. That pressing plant is notorious for bad quality control, and I think we're hitting a breaking point as consumers, as collectors, considering the price point of this was right around $50. And yes, you can get an exchange, you can return this item in case you have a defective record, but you know, that's putting it all on the consumer, like the end of the line. That shouldn't be the case. That should be an exception. Like every once in a while that may have to happen. This should be really happening at the pressing plant. And it's like, I've had records from a bunch of different pressing plants, and it's just like this one place is just notorious for letting things slide, and it's frustrating, I guess, because they're cheaper and so they cut corners in that sense. But again, it's just frustrating as record buyers to have that happen. Now, I'll be honest, I am not super picky. Like, to me, these are not precious. These are not, they don't have to arrive pristine. I understand that this is a physical media and things, get bumped in shipping, or I drop my records. Sometimes I bend up the corners. It's like not the end of the world for me, but as long as the record plays, I'm happy. So I got lucky with this one. But if you go on Discogs, you can see a lot of people have not been so lucky. So, buyer beware. There are a ton of different pressings. This is an older pressing. This is a reissue on Capitol that I have had for many, many years. These things are not that expensive. Beyond that, this is a great album. Definitely check it out. And this new mix also has a ton of extras. This double LP has outtakes of, every song on here. So it's a real fun listen. Definitely check this out. All right, so up next I have this double LP live album that's new for 2024, and these are never heard before live recordings from 1953. It's incredible. So the story goes, a Blue Note club in Chicago got Nat King Cole to play. I think it was about 8 nights, and it was kind of a step down for him in terms of pay, but I think it was important for him because at this time he was well known as a singer, but the thing was he never stopped playing piano, so he wanted to showcase that. Plus, it was sort of a homecoming for him, and for me, as a big fan of his King Cole trio, I love the sound of that. So there's that element there. And they're playing his pop stuff, which, the original recordings are a bit bombastic, a little bit over-the-top production style, but this is a blend of both. It's stripped down to just bass, piano, guitar, drums, but they're doing his pop hits in this jazz style, and man, it just swings. It's just a joy to listen to. And now this is a combination of about 5 different nights that were recorded. It's very well curated. The song selection is excellent. You get big hits like Nature Boy, Unforgettable, It's Only a Paper Moon, Straighten Up and Fly Right. So you're bound to find your favorite song on here. here. And honestly, I don't believe there are many live recordings of Nat King Cole, at least in a like full concert setting. So this is very, very special. Now this vinyl release also comes with an insert that gives some context as well as some photos, and also has a reprint of the Blue Note newsletter that talks about this engagement. Now this is available on vinyl, CD, and of course streaming. So please, you know what I mean, you know what I'm gonna say, check this out.
Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top.
This is Armanos Gutierrez's 6th album put up by Easy Eye Sound, and it is beautiful. These are real life brothers that play guitar-driven music with such style and expertise. I mean, they really don't need lyrics. This music invokes so much passion and feeling from just the way they are playing. The arrangements are gorgeous. And, I always consider that a real challenge to not use lyrics, because oftentimes that can make up for simple songwriting. But this is just pure music. There's no singing. And I would say the overall feeling of this record is much like the album title. This is cosmic, but also has this sense of foreboding, this yearning, a sense of nostalgia that things aren't going quite the way you expected them to. There's also a little bit of sorrow in there, but there's also this sense of perseverance to rise up again, to move forward. And I think that is very powerful. I would say my favorite song on here is track 2 on side 1, Low Sun. It is just gorgeous. Honestly, all of these songs could be part of a soundtrack, and it would add so much to a film. I mean, even the cover kind of looks like a movie poster. You got this awesome text here, this black and white, very contrasty photo. I mean, these guys just look so cool. It also includes a photo insert with credits on the back. This is available on colored vinyl as well as this standard black vinyl edition, and there's also a cassette as well as streaming, so you got no excuse. You got to check this album out. It is new for 2024, and I love it. Okay, so up next, I have Orchestra Akukan with their 3rd album, and I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it doesn't matter because this is so freaking fantastic. I love this album. I was shocked that this is a new band. They nail that 50s, 60s Cuban style big band to a T. It is so good. All of the arrangements on here are just gorgeous. I just want to eat this album up. It is so very good. I mean, you put this on and I want to mambo. It is so good. I can't begin to describe how good this is. And this band is just full of energy and passion, and it just comes through. And the fact that they're on Daptone Recording Company should tell you enough. I mean, they put out amazing work. This is no exception. I mean, even the attention to detail of the cover art, doesn't that look like something you'd find from like the 50s or early 60s? I mean, the only thing that kind of gives it away is the date on the back here. I mean, that's it. I mean, this is just so very good. I just love this album. It's one of my favorites from 2024. It is available obviously on vinyl and streaming, so please put this on, listen to it, and then thank me later. So up next, I have 2 records from Rhino High Fidelity. This first one is the 7th album by Yes, originally released in 1974, and this is technically the 50th anniversary repressing. And I gotta say, this is an interesting album because the first side is just one long song, Gates of Delirium. It was largely conceived by John Anderson, and it's pretty much a war song. It tends to get really out. I mean, war song in the sense that it's like, it depicts sort of a battle in a sense. And so you have this real feeling of epicness. I would say that this would fit incredibly well over scenes from Lord of the Rings. It's got that kind of feeling, but it also has that, that real 1970s analog synthesizer sound. I think it's really cool. And I love how cosmic it gets towards the end. It definitely takes you places. Now on side 2, we have just 2 tracks. Sound Chaser is more of a jazz fusion song with some high intensity and awesome guitar soloing. And the last song is a real proggy 70s synth-filled song with John's dreamy vocals and some killer guitar work. So if all you know of Yes is their hits, definitely take a listen to this release. I think you're gonna dig how free form it sounds. Now this particular pressing sounds fantastic, but honestly, this is a really common record. If you can't get your hands on this, I'm sure you can find one that will fit your budget. I mean, these don't go for that much money. Obviously, Rhino High Fidelity is limited to 5,000 copies, so it's going to be a bit more pricey, but this is a beautiful release. definitely on par with the rest of their releases. If you've heard one of their releases, you know what you're in for. This sounds fantastic. So yeah, definitely check this out. And the other record from Rhino Fidelity is the 50th anniversary repressing of Bad Company's debut album, originally released in 1974. And if you know it, you know it. And if you don't, I'm sure you've heard some of the songs on here. It is so very good. It's all analog pressing. And, you know, it really does this music justice. I mean, it was that mid-70s UK blues band kind of stuff. I mean, there's a ton of great hits on here. Has a very solid, you know, drums, guitar, bass, vocals. Everything about it is just like hitting all the right notes. If you want that like 70s crunchy rock sound, this is it. I think Kevin Gray did a great job on the mastering on this. It's very crisp and clear. It sounds very similar to how I remember this album sounding. Now, I don't have an original copy to compare it to, but I think this sounds great. But, you know, no matter which copy you pick up, whether it be this one or an earlier pressing, you really can't go wrong. And it's pretty common. So if this doesn't fit in your budget, you can probably find one for around $5. It's definitely worth checking out, whether it be on vinyl, CD, cassette, streaming. Honestly, however you can get your hands on this record, listen to it. It is so much fun. So up next, I have a trio of records from a relatively new record label out of Italy called Birdbox. And I think what they're doing is really cool. They have a real sense of capturing the best audio quality possible, taking time to record the analog tape. They really take time to master an analog. And they, at least for their more recent releases, they've been pressing at Optimal Media. And I think beyond all that, there is a real love of music and to really celebrate the artists and give credit to everyone that worked on the album and give you a ton of information as a listener. Now, let me show you this first release here. This is, and I apologize if I get your names wrong, Umberto and Claudio, and I believe this is their first record of them recording together, and I'm just going to call them masters of guitar. I mean, the playing that these two showcase on this album, and then the next one I will talk about, is unbelievable. But I think what really shows their mastery is that they don't do a lot of guitar noodling or crazy sounds. This is just like pure instrumental music. It's simple at times, but it's also complex with emotions and feelings that come out without using words, and I think that really shows their mastery. And I would say this record borders along the lines of contemporary classical music. There's an overall sense of like flowy, ethereal vibe about it, and I just really enjoyed listening to how well these two played off of each other. There's so much sound created, and so much is said without speaking. It really was a joy to listen to this album. This particular pressing is on this really cool blue vinyl. So yeah, definitely check out this release. It's also available on streaming, so honestly, you have no excuse. Moving right along, we have the second album of Umberto and Claudio. This is titled 2. It's from 2023. And I would call this music classical meets jazz. And I only say that because Claudio is playing a classical guitar, so you have those elements. But this is really a jazz-focused, all-instrumental album, superbly played by both artists. There is something so mesmerizing about not only their playing, but the sort of simplicity of their arrangements. They are really focused, and there's, you know, nothing to distract you from the pure musicianship of the guitar playing. Yeah, overall, this is just a gorgeous album to listen to. It is utterly romantic. It sort of sweeps you into an altered state. For me, this relaxing buzz came over my body, almost like a sound bath. I just sort of laid down and let the music wash over me. So I highly recommend you check this release out however you can. So last up from Birdbox Records, I have Cristiano Giardini with Odyssey. I think that's what it translates to. This is new for 2024, and I believe this is his first record. I can't find a lot of info on him, but this is Just fantastic. You know, I really love the overall tone of this album. This lineup is fantastic. You got Cristiano playing tenor and soprano sax. You got alto sax, piano, double bass, and drums. And that 5-piece combo lays down some wonderful music. It's got a great vibe about it. It's very uplifting. It's got a fantastic tempo that just sort of bounces along. It's very carefree. I'd say if you're looking for that kind of classic coffee house, jazz club kind of music, this is that album in spades. It's beautiful to listen to, and it's expertly pressed at Optimal Media. Honestly, this one is just like extremely talented people laying down some beautiful music, and I just in love with it. And honestly, don't let this cover fool you. The music is very warm. It's very inviting. It's just like, I love listening to this record. It is hand numbered on the back here. It's limited to 300 copies, so get one while you can, but if not, you're in luck because it is available on streaming, so definitely check it out. All right, moving right along, we have Milton Esparanza. This is a gorgeous release from two wonderful musicians, and I love the way their voices play together. Milton has a lot of gravitas. You know, he's in his 80s, and Esperanza represents youth. She's coming in high on top, and they just blend so beautifully. I think one of the best representations of how well their vocals play together is the cover of the Beatles' A Day in a Life. I mean, to take such an iconic song and make it their own while at the same time playing tribute to it, it is incredible. I love the choices that they made. I also really like how they recreated some of the more iconic moments in that song, but they also had a lot of fun with it. I would say the overall feeling I get with this album is that I've been transported to a cosmic nightclub. I mean, it feels more like a musical soundtrack than an album. And I love the different textures created on this album, and it's a beautiful blend of Western classical instruments with traditional Brazilian sounds. The song selection is very well curated. It showcased both of their talents, and everything is done within the same style of this album. There's instrumentals on here as well as vocals. There's original compositions as well as covers. It really is a variety of music across two LPs. And then on top of all this, you have this, what I would say like an orchestral arrangement. There's a lot of instruments on here. This is not a small record. It creates this very powerful kind of floating feeling throughout this. It's just, wow. It's both big and small. It really was a fun listen. Now, this is a earth green colored vinyl. There's also a sun yellow vinyl color, and both of those are this eco vinyl. So what they do is they take remnants of other pressings, mix them together to create new pressings. So it's a way of recycling trim pieces of old records. It's also available on black vinyl, CD, streaming. So yeah, no matter what your preferred way of listening, they got you covered. Definitely check this album out. It is a gorgeous album for 2024. All right, so next up I have Douglas Lee with Themes for Falling Downstairs. This is his debut album, and honestly, I didn't know what to expect from this album. You know, I'd never heard of him before, but this is an all-instrumental record, and after I heard it, I just fell in love with it. It's just the right amount of quirky meets 1940s noir, meets elevator/lounge music with a little bit of cool jazz and just a touch of exotica for good measure. Trust me, if you like music from Twin Peaks that's sort of borderline cheesy but also kind of cool, then this is going to be right up your alley. Also, there's a ton of different instruments on here, so if you're someone who loves listening to interesting soundscapes, I cannot recommend this album enough. It is a must-hear. This was originally released in 2020, and it's available on vinyl, cassette, CD, and of course, streaming. So up next, I have a local band spotlight. This is Carnage Assada, Head on a Platter. This band is really interesting. So they got started in 1993, and they were heavily involved in the punk scene at that time. They played all over LA, a bunch of tiny little clubs, most of which aren't even around anymore. But what's crazy to me is that this is their first new record since 1999, and it includes 3 of the founding members. Now, they call their music energetic punk jazz orchestra, and you know what? I think think that's pretty accurate. There is a lot of melody going on here. It's not just like, punk music from the 90s. They incorporate rhythms and styles from different genres, and there's even horns on some of these tracks. They also incorporate elements of psychedelia with surf and mariachi. Overall, this is a very solid effort from a band that's very well seasoned, no pun intended. Definitely check them out. They are starting to play some shows, so hopefully you'll see them in your own town in the near future. Until then, definitely check this out. This is new for 2024, and it's on Historical Records.
Still can't cry.
These next batch of records all came from thrift stores, or they were given to me, or I bought them. So this first one is part of the Co-Star series. So you act scenes opposite your favorite star. Now this is June Havoc. I sadly don't really know who she is. And basically, it's pretty simple. She says her lines, and then there's a pause, and you got to fit your line in there before she says her next one. And that in itself can be very entertaining. I had a lot of fun with this record. Yeah, so if you're out there, definitely check it out. If you're out there and you come across one of these, they are fun.
And tonight I could kill for that love.
I can't believe it. I won't believe it.
Well, you got to, because it's true. You see, Johnny, Nick DeSantis, he was my husband.
Your husband?
And shocks you, huh?
This next record, I definitely picked it up for the cover because I was like, I'd never seen it. I didn't know who she was. But honestly, if you like sultry 1970s soul, you need this album in your life. It's called Cherries, Bananas, and Other Fine Fruits. And if you're wondering if that's an innuendo, you would be correct. She does not mince words on this album, but this is not a comedy album. This is straight up soul music done exceptionally well. And I would say there's some funk and disco elements mixed in there. I mean, especially when you got Bootsy Collins playing bass on some of these songs, you know you're in for a treat. I believe this is her debut, and it is fantastic. According to Discogs, she released one other album and a handful of singles. Thankfully, this album is available on streaming, but honestly, the vinyl copies aren't that expensive. I think a lot of people are sleeping on this record. I can't recommend this one enough. If you're looking for a deeper cut with that authentic 70s soul sound, you can't go wrong with this record. And the last record I picked up is Sun with Sunburn. This is from 1978. This is a funk band from Ohio. This is their third album, and it is wonderful. They do soul, funk, R&B. They blend it all together. Honestly, I had never heard of this band before, but since this record was in great shape, I took a chance on it, and I loved it. I mean, it is a shame that these guys aren't more well known by the general public, but I'm sure those of you who are fans of the genre know this band very well. Overall, this record is very well produced. It's got that warm, fuzzy analog feeling throughout. The song selections and arrangements are excellent. I would say track 3 on side 1 is my favorite song on here. It's got such a groovy, soulful feeling to it. I mean, it's just like Friday afternoon hanging with your friends. It just doesn't get better than this. The entire album is a party on a disc. I can't recommend these guys enough. Luckily, this one is pretty easy to come by. It's available on vinyl, 8-track CD, and of course streaming. So definitely check this one out. All right, so this next one was given to me. This is Paul McCartney's 7th album. It's titled Back in the USSR. And when it was originally released in 1988, it was only for the Soviet Union. And I actually got an original pressing. I wasn't even expecting this. I never sought this out, but it's kind of cool. It feels like I'm holding a piece of history. You know, when this was released, you couldn't really get a copy. You had to spend a bunch of money to get one imported, but honestly, these days, finding original Russian pressings aren't that expensive. And there was a recent reissue put out a couple years ago. So yeah, I mean, this is a fun album. There's, it's just a lot of cover songs. These are songs that mean a lot to Paul, and he does them with a lot of joy, and so I enjoyed them quite a bit. I mean, one of them, 20 Flight Rock, I love that song. If you can find it for a good price, definitely pick this up. I don't think this is a must-own Paul McCartney album, but it's just really fun, and it's definitely a conversation starter.
So I walk 2 by 3 by 4.
And then recently I popped into one of my favorite record stores here in LA. That is Record Safari, and I picked up Inside Problems by Andrew Bird. And I love this album when it came out. And since then, I saw him in 2023 on tour for this album. Amazing show. And then in fact, I just saw him Friday night as part of the Andrew Bird trio opening up for Pink Martini. And he was fantastic then. So yeah, I really love the work that he does. This album is fantastic. And this just happens to be the Apple Red edition. 20 bucks for relatively new pressing. I mean, you can't go wrong. And especially when it's an album you love, that's such a great price. So if you're in LA, definitely check out Record Safari.
Stars don't owe you anything.
This record, the Get Up Kids 4-Minute Mile, I picked this one up from Record Safari as well. I think this was also 20 bucks. It comes on this kind of cool orange colored vinyl. This record means a lot to me. I remember when this came out, I was in high school and I loved the sound of this and I couldn't get enough of it. I remember being in this restaurant called Saturn Cafe. It's no longer with us, but it was a really cool spot. It was like vegetarian, vegan before that was like trendy. But they didn't advertise it that way. It was just like a cool spot to go. They had an open mic night. I played that many times and they had a jukebox and someone played this and I was like, what is this? I have to find out what it is. And I ran over to it, saw the album cover. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need this in my life. And so I think eventually I got like a burned CD copy of it, but it's probably not for everybody. It's late 90s emo, but for me, it just doesn't get much better than this. And yeah, if you want to know who I am better, listen to this album. I went to Amoeba and I picked up this. I paid 10 bucks for it. I've been looking for a copy of this for a long time. To be fair, I found copies of it, but it's not something I have to have, and I wasn't going to pay like 20 bucks for it. And honestly, the copies I've been finding have been in worse shape than this for more money. So I was pretty happy with the price of this. Now, a couple dings against this particular pressing is, there's the receipt. I like to keep the receipt sometimes. I don't know if you do that. But the one thing, this is a very early pressing. It's a mono pressing, but it's auto coupled. So this was meant for record changers. So you have side 1 and then you have side 4. So in this modern day and age, these aren't the most desirable copies just because it's kind of a pain in the butt. But, for the time that they came out, it made sense. I was listening to it and I kept cracking up because like the way that they described Liverpool was a poor British seaport slum town. And then like, there was also other moments, they're describing the Beatles and then, they called John the chief Beatle, just stuff that just was cracking me up. So I would say this is not an essential own. This is not something you need as a Beatle collector, but if you come across it for a good price, you might as well pick it up. It is amusing. That's the best way I can describe it. You don't need to pay more for stereo. I have a mono version. You don't really, don't spend a lot of money on it. In fact, there's probably a YouTube rip of it, so, go listen to that. I'm a completist. I like to have all the Capitol releases, so this was one that I was missing, hence why I picked it up. 10 bucks, you can't beat that, so yeah. And finally, I have another super important record to me that I almost passed on buying, and I got it when I visited Chicago. I went to this store called Record Breakers. Excellent place. They have a turtle in the back. Say hi. But a really cool record store, and I saw this and I was like sort of taken aback. Like, why would they have Slow Gherkin, a local Santa Cruz ska band? This album came out in 1998, and I was like, why is this all the way in Chicago? They wanted $30 for it, which I was like, that's kind of high. I don't want to pay that, because I remember, years ago finding it in Santa Cruz at Streetlight Music or Streetlight Records for like 20 bucks. I'm like, I'll just go back and find it there. But then like on the walk home, I checked Discogs and I'm like, oh no, this record goes for a lot more now. And you can't even find a copy of it. And it was limited to 1,000 copies. So I better go back and buy it. But by the time I went back, it was already closed. And so I just went the next day, and thankfully it was still there. But yeah, this is just, again, if you want to know who I am, this album right here. I remember the feeling I got seeing them live at the Catalyst in Santa Cruz. A bunch of my friends went. They said, hey, come check out this band. It'll be fun. And like, I learned what skanking was, this new dance. Like, it was such a communal experience. Even the lead singer, like, he would have this moment during one of the songs, and he would kind of like sit down at the stage and have this monologue. And I'd never before seen so many instruments on one stage before. It was just like this, I don't know, it was one of those life-defining moments. Like it was a core memory was imprinted in my mind, and like I still remember it vividly. I got so drenched in sweat because I danced for like the whole time. I think afterwards we went to Denny's to get food, and that became like a ritual for our friend group. We would go to ska shows and then go to Denny's. We went so much that we made friends with one of the servers. So much wasted youth, but amazing times, and this record represents that for me, and it's just so incredibly special, and I'm very, very grateful to have this in my collection now. So yeah, definitely check it out. And funny story, years later, I made a music video for this band, We Are Scientists, I think was the name of the band. Totally on spec. I just did it. And I actually got in touch with the manager of the band, and it turns out he used to manage that band. It's kind of a small world. But anyway, there you go. Those are the records for this episode. Let me know what you think. Let me know which ones were your favorites, which ones you want to pick up. If you ended up picking up this John Lennon, let me know how your copy went. I'm really curious. Until then, I want to thank you all so much for watching, but I especially want to thank my members over on Patreon. I'm your Vinyl Geek, and I'll catch you on the flip side.